Picture this. You're in the delivery room, and the stakes are, well, literally life and death. You've got a patient who absolutely needs to be induced. But if you pull the trigger when her body just isn't ready, you're looking at a massive cascade of complications. We're talking prolonged fetal distress, alarms blaring all over the place, and way too often an emergency C-section that we really could have avoided. So as future clinicians, you've got to ask yourself, why do some of these labor inductions go perfectly smoothly while others just fail spectacularly? Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're going to absolutely master the answer to that exact question, and it's called the Bishop score. Now, this isn't just some boring clinical checklist you memorize for boards. It is literally the ultimate objective roadmap. It predicts with incredible accuracy whether an artificial induction is going to lead to a safe, natural delivery or if it's going to end up on an operating table. Okay, let's dive into this roadmap. First up, we'll hit the artificial labor problem. Then we'll break down the physiology of cervical changes, go through the 5 main scale parameters, look at the score calculation algorithm, and wrap up with some real clinical cases. All right, Section 1, the artificial labor problem. The core issue here is that forcing an induction on a body that just isn't anatomically prepared is basically asking for trouble. It triggers these totally useless contractions and puts both the mother and the baby at serious risk. Section 2, physiology of cervical changes. Now, I don't want you to just memorize numbers here. To really grasp readiness, we have to look under the hood and understand what's actually happening to the cervix as labor gets closer. For almost the entire pregnancy, the cervix is essentially a locked vault, right? It's hard, it's long, and it's tightly closed to protect the fetus. But as labor approaches, these massive hormonal shifts kick in. Estrogen shoots up, progesterone drops, and prostaglandins go to work. This kicks off 2 huge physiological changes: hydration, where it literally fills with water, and collageноlysis, which breaks down those rigid collagen fibers. It's a brilliant transformation. Think of it this way. An unfavorable cervix is literally as hard as a piece of wood. It's totally collagen-rich, long, and closed. But after all that hydration and collagen breakdown, it becomes favorable. It transforms to feel as soft as your lips. It pulls back, shortens, and starts to open up. This physical shift is cervical ripening, and it's exactly what the Bishop score is measuring. Moving on to Section 3, the 5 main scale parameters. During a manual exam, we're evaluating 5 very specific things, aiming for a maximum possible total score of 13. Let's break those down. First up, we're looking at dilation and effacement. Dilation is pretty straightforward. It's just how wide the cervix has opened, measured in centimeters. 0 points if it's totally closed. But once it opens up to 5 centimeters or more, boom, you score a maximum of 3 points. Effacement, on the other hand, is how much the cervix has thinned out, or shortened, measured as a percentage. A normal length cervix gets 0 points, but as it stretches over the baby's head and gets literally paper thin, we're talking 80% or more effaced, that scores a 3. Building on that, we assess station, consistency, and position. Station measures exactly how far the baby's head has dropped into the pelvis relative to the ischial spines. High and floating, that's a -3 station, scoring 0. When it drops right down to a +1 or +2, that scores a 3, meaning delivery is super close. Next is consistency, which we already touched on. Firm as wood gets you 0 points, but soft as lips gets you 2. And finally, position. Early on, the cervix is pointing backwards, or posterior, which is a 0. But as labor gets closer, it literally swings forward to an anterior position, so it lines up with the birth canal, and that scores 2 points. But look, modern obstetrics isn't just about plugging in raw data, right? Context is everything. So we use clinical modifiers to dial in the accuracy of that baseline score. You actually add 1 point to the final score if the patient has preeclampsia, or if she's had previous natural births. Why? Because her body is just inherently more primed to deliver. On the flip side, you subtract 1 point if it's a post-term pregnancy, if she's a first-time mom, or if her water broke prematurely but actual contractions haven't kicked in yet. Now, you might be wondering, hey, we have all this amazing modern tech, so why are we still relying on a manual touch exam? Honestly, it's a great question. We definitely use transvaginal ultrasounds, or TVUS, today. Ultrasound is incredibly objective. It can precisely spot if a cervix is under 25 millimeters long, which is a massive predictor of a successful induction. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. An ultrasound cannot feel. It can't assess that wood versus lips texture, and it can't feel the positional angle of the cervix. That subjective human touch is exactly why the Bishop score is still the undisputed gold standard. Though, to be fair, the best practitioners definitely use both. Okay, section 4, score calculation algorithm. You've done the manual exam, you've calculated the score. Now, what's your next move? This is where your clinical assessment turns into real medical action. Here's your clinical decision matrix. We chop the total scores up into 3 distinct action zones. If your patient scores between a 9 and a 13, that cervix is favorable. It is completely ripe and ready to go. A score of 6 to 8, that's your gray zone. It's kind of a coin toss, a 50-50 chance, so tactics are going to vary based on the specific patient. But listen closely because this is the absolute most critical zone, 0 to 5. This is a highly unfavorable, completely unripe cervix. And the golden rule here, oxytocin is strictly forbidden. Trying to force contractions right now is practically guaranteed to fail. Your one and only tactic here is cervical ripening, using pharmacological agents like prostaglandins or dropping in a mechanical Foley catheter to physically prep that tissue first. All right, section 5, real clinical cases. I want you to put your attending physician hat on for a second. I'm going to give you the raw data, and I want you to mentally calculate the Bishop score as we go. Here's case 1. We've got a 24-year-old first-time mother. She is 41 weeks and 3 days pregnant, so she's post-term. On her exam, dilation is exactly 0. Effacement shows the cervix is still a solid 3.5 centimeters long. Station is a -3, so very high up. Consistency is firm, and the position is posterior. So taking a look at those parameters, what is her Bishop score? 0. If you said 0, you hit the nail right on the head. Every single one of those parameters points to a cervix that hasn't even thought about preparing for labor yet. It is literally the most unfavorable, unripe cervix possible. So what's our move? Well, because her score is a fat 0, direct induction with oxytocin is absolutely off the table. No way. We have to initiate cervical ripening. We'd give prostaglandins or insert a Foley catheter to chemically and mechanically soften things up. And then, we just patiently wait, 12 to 24 hours before we even think about checking again. Okay, let's look at case 2. We've got a 30-year-old mom, third pregnancy, currently at 39 weeks. She has diabetes, which means an induction is clinically indicated here. On exam, dilation is already at 3 centimeters. Effacement is at 80%. The baby's head has dropped down to a -1 station. The cervix consistency is nice and soft, and the position is anterior. Take a second and add those points up in your head. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer contrast to our first case. This patient scores a massive 11 out of 13. Her body has basically done all the hard preparatory work for us, naturally. And because she has that highly favorable score of 11, our game plan completely flips. This cervix is fully prepared. We can totally bypass that whole ripening phase and jump straight into direct induction. As the physician, you can confidently do an amniotomy, breaking the water, and start up an oxytocin infusion to get those contractions going. With a score this high, she's got a greater than 95% chance of a successful natural delivery. As we wrap up this explainer, I really want you to take away this quote from the core of our source material. The Bishop score isn't just math. It prevents unnecessary C-sections and ensures a safe delivery. I mean, mastering this isn't just about cramming for a board exam. It's about getting a deep, intuitive feel for physiological readiness so you can make those split-second calls that literally save mothers and babies from the trauma of surgery. You've got the roadmap now. You know the physiology, the parameters, and those absolutely crucial action zones. So I'm going to leave you with one final thought. How will you actively apply the Bishop score to prevent an unnecessary C-section in your very next clinical rotation? Think about it. Visualize being in that delivery room. Thanks for hanging out with me for this explainer, and keep learning.